Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. If you're watching the video, you will not see him because he is on his way back from camp. So we're going to kick it off with high tempo and get right into that, Matt. I know you guys were talking, we talked a little bit of heat acclimation last week. So how do you guys handle camp from your coaching perspective?
Going into camp, I mean, this week it's kind of a scaled back version because you're not doing the actual hitting that you may, if you're thinking about football camp. That's not really what comes to mind. A lot of this week it boils down to getting yourself acclimated to the weather. There's a lot of kids that either they're working on farms, they got summer jobs, and they haven't been around the program. This is the week that it's kind of like, hey, time to get back to work. And we have them out in helmets and have them in shoulder pads, and it's nice to just get them running and getting used to being physically active, because I definitely think that you're seeing a change. You're not seeing as many kids that just go out and play backyard football or backyard wiffle ball like maybe we did when we were growing up.
Hey, I will ask you this. With heat acclimation, do you guys line up garbage cans on the field for people that are overweight and need to throw up?
No, we just let them just trot over to the side of the field and handle their throwing up there. We do have garbage cans, though, but it's to take the place of some of the defenders. So you can work on alignments and some different stuff. We do have the cans there, but it's not for puking.
I didn't know if you watched any DJ Durkin film and got any ideas from him on the way he did training.
Try to avoid some of the DJ Durkin training, because is he at Alabama now?
Yeah, everyone ends up there. Rich Rod. I think Rich Rod's there. DJ Durkin.
Maybe I should do that, and I can end up at Alabama. I can roll Tide.
So, going into camp, do you have anything differently you're doing this year, going into year 2 as a head coach?
Actually, there's a really big thing that we're doing differently this year. We're looking at developing leadership. And I know it's not something that typically you think of, but it was something that I felt like I want to start to push, because when you start looking at the connections between football and a job, there's a lot of similarities. There's things that I'm sure you can think about with a coach that you looked at either scheme or philosophy and you're like, this is ridiculous. Why am I doing it? Same thing at work. Your boss tells you to do something and you're like, I don't understand why he's telling me to do this. So you just learn to figure out how to get stuff done and how to work with people that are difficult. So by trying to focus more on developing leadership and what does that leadership look like, I'm hoping to see more of a transformation. I feel that like there's a difference already in camp, and over these past 2 days, I feel like we've made progress, but it's to be seen long term how those effects are going to be.
Very cool insight from head coach, giving us some details on camp. Before we get started, you got anything else before we get into the Hall of Fame stuff?
No, that's just, I'm glad football's back. We've been waiting. I'm glad that we're back in business.
And I'm going to go ahead and just kill it right off the bat, because I did not like the Hall of Fame game. I felt like when I was watching that, a lot of people made fun of the AAF because you had like a lot of missed punts and things like that. I counted, 3 muffed punts at least? And that was, I might have missed some. They looked horrific in that game. And they didn't have the starters in. And I thought, why am I watching this? What am I doing to myself? Is that the only thing? Have I been starved for football that bad since the AAF folded that I have to watch this weird preseason game with a bunch of guys that I'll never need to know their names? Because very limited people on that are going to make a gigantic impact. If you're playing heavy minutes in the Hall of Fame game, let's be honest, you're not going to be a starting player. Very little amount of people are going to make an impact after that. So what are your thoughts, Coach?
I'm just glad that it's back, you know. I mean, is it perfect? No, but it's preseason football, and this is why I kind of feel like you need those tune-up games to kind of get things ready to go. The idea of going straight into regular season, I don't know that you're going to see that level of crispness from that you saw from the action that was there.
That's why I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do, because they've talked about getting rid of 2 preseason games and making them part of the regular season. But what kind of football are we going to expect? Because then you're down to 2 preseason games. Do they think the starters are going to play in both of them? Because then you're going from guys that might only play the last preseason game. They're only playing, one extra game. Now you're adding an extra game onto that. Are they still going to play that last preseason game? So they're realistically getting 2 full games added to the schedule, unless they go that weird thing they were trying to do of cutting games out. I just think that if you're going to put...
The thing that I look at...
Go ahead.
The thing that I look at with that is, when you take, like, at the high school or college level, there may be a gigantic gap between your starting player and a backup. I would really think that at the NFL, there shouldn't be that significant of a drop-off between starter A and backup B. In theory, there's certain players that it's gonna be tough to replace them, but by the NFL standards, you should be able to have relatively comparable talent across the board. And I think what's going to hurt is it's going to end up hurting in the long run. They're already looking at players that they're not practicing every day. You're looking at guys that take days off of practice from camp. They're having time off for other stuff. You're progressively taking time away. That in the end, it hurts your ability to prepare and put the best numbers out there.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how they're going to shake it up, because I think on your thing, I think there's going to be another issue because of the big gap between starter A and starter B. Because you're seeing a lot of guys that they might not be as close as what you're expecting. I think whenever you have the top level guys, there's a bigger drop off. Now, once you're in that second pool of guys, that it might not be as close, but I think once you have a guy that's as elevated as that and as hardworking, that's why you see guys that are able to stick on rosters for multiple years, because there is such a gigantic gap. I mean, look at what the Jets just did. They signed a center from Carolina that had retired. If it was really that close, they wouldn't have went and tried to bring him back. You could have just hired anybody off. So I think if you're that starter A, that gives you a lot of leverage on, okay, I'm not going to play any of these preseason games, and you know you're going to bring me on. But at that point, the NFL makes a big spectacle about the Hall of Fame. I would rather have watched a 7-on-7, to be honest, because it's going to be something a little bit more competitive, possibly. You're going to see the starting players play if you're doing a like no contact 7-on-7. I don't know how they would.
There's no way that would fly, because think back to when they had that skills competition where they did the beach 7-on-7 type thing, and one of the players blew his knee out. If there's any kind of level, and I know you're talking playing it on the field, but you're talking the best of the best doing 7-on-7. They're gonna be competitive, and it's gonna, even though you're saying non-contact, they're gonna drill each other, because I see it all the time at the high school level.
That's true, and that's what they're going to have to decide what they want to do, because I didn't see the TV ratings for that game. I know it was the first one back, and you're kind of promoting your Hall of Fame, but at that point, do something football related that isn't just hey, there's Joe Flacco on the sideline. Look, there's Joe Flacco. Hey, did you guys see Joe Flacco? He's right there. It's like, okay, I know what he looks like. He's been on how many memes, people saying he's elite. I don't need to see another picture of him on the sideline. It's not real football. It reminds me of like when Peyton Manning was on the sideline when he was in Denver, because he had that neck issue. And they're always talking about him the entire game. It's like, I don't want to hear people just talk about athletes during the game that aren't playing. Just let me watch the game. Let it be fun. That game wasn't fun. You can't tell me that college football makes a ton of mistakes. That's not as good as the NFL. Well, I watched a ton of mistakes in that NFL preseason game. Why is that on television then? Like, I would have rather watched a MAC game. At least there would have been some type of meaning to it. I don't think they need preseason at all, to be honest. I think that's what I'm getting at.
Well, I want to see what the Hall of Fame game, they're playing way ahead of the rest of the schedule. So I think that game, it is going to be sloppy. I want to see what the rest of the preseason, this first week of preseason is going to look like, because I don't think that it's necessarily going to be as sloppy as what the Hall of Fame game was, because you're dealing with really, really quick turnarounds in terms of getting to camp and then getting teams out on the field. So I think there is something to be said about that too, that some of these other teams have a little bit more time to game plan and kind of get some extra practices and different stuff involved.
Yeah, see, I don't know why they just don't make it scrimmages then. Non-televised scrimmages. Get rid of all 4 preseason game. You get like 2 scrimmages against another squad. They already kind of do that anyway. They practice together. A lot of people don't know that. Just do 2 scrimmages off camera, and then if you're going to extend the season, then extend the season. But at least as a fan, the first football that I get to watch, unless you're doing, I mean, they could even sell tickets for charity at the scrimmages and have it at the smaller fields that they already do their camps at. I mean, a lot of people go to those anyway. Let them see it.
Speaking of which, did you see the fight that broke out between the Chargers and Rams?
Yeah, and their little scrimmage thing that when they got together. Why not just have that be the preseason? Let them fight.
That was an awesome fight. That was an awesome fight. Major League Baseball should take note. If you're gonna fight, don't just stand there and dance about it. Do something.
Well, that's what.
Brawled, guys were slamming each other like that. That was better than a hockey fight.
That's what I was gonna say. Hockey fights are manufactured these days. Take some notes. Do that. That would get me more hyped for the season than anything. If they had like these secret scrimmages or teams are just fighting and then you post those fights to social media, that would get me pumped up. That would build some rivalry back up. I mean, I know those teams aren't really in the same conference or division, so they
are in the same city though.
Yeah, so they can team up, fight each other. I mean, Steelers could do something with the Bills. That's close enough. Oh, I guess they're in the same conference though. I don't know what the closest.
Could be the Redskins.
True, Redskins, but I figured that would go to the Ravens just based on proximity. Almost like the Jets and Giants. But, I mean, you're going to have teams you can do crossovers with and do like scrimmages. Could you imagine if that was at St. Vincent's? You had like, you're fighting the Bills or the Redskins players? Awesome. That would be great. Plus, a lot of them guys hang out in the offseason anyway, so you get to hang out with the friends. It's not in front of the cameras. You don't have to put on your marketing face, and you can actually meet the fans and do whatever. I mean, that way you're getting right into football. All of the games count. And then almost like a minor league. Like I would imagine, I wouldn't be surprised if the NBA did something like that, where they have enough summer league stuff going on that you just get rid of preseason. Just go right into the game. And you can pull players up and back almost like a minor league system and just do it like that. I don't think we need the preseason anymore. I just don't think we need it. You have anything else on that first game?
No, I'm just glad that it was back. It wasn't perfect, no, but you got to start somewhere. I'm glad that it's back.
Do you want to talk about the actual Hall of Fame aspect now? So, of course, they inducted my man, Ty Law, Michigan man, putting us right up there in one of the top universities with some of the most NFL guys, because there's a couple ahead of us, but we're up there, that. I saw that. I saw Miami was trying to promote theirs, although they have the same amount as Syracuse and Pitt. Is that really a lot, Matt? I don't think
be a lot.
I don't think it is. If you're having the same amount of Hall of Famers as Syracuse, you shouldn't be going on Twitter and bragging about it, Miami. Just throwing that out there. I will say, too, that the next class is rumored, for people that don't follow closely, it's rumored to include as many as 20 inductees because they haven't been including a lot of linemen and lesser talent. Like, I don't want to say lesser talents, but lesser publicized positions. So linemen, even though you might know who they are, they haven't been getting voted in. I mean, Alan Faneca, for Steeler fans, good Lord, he should have been in this year. The fact that they didn't put him in, and the fact then that they go and try to kind of announce it ahead of time, like, hey, you know what? We're just going to make a gigantic class because we know Alan Faneca and a couple of other linemen should have been in. I think there were 5 on the list. We talked about them on the show. I believe we did. Maybe I'm wrong, but because I know that there were a couple Big Ten linemen on there. One of them was from Michigan. I know we've talked about him. Steve Hutchinson was the Michigan guy that was really close to getting in. Alan Faneca, Steeler guy. So I know we talked about it, whether it was on an episode or not. Maybe it was just me and Matt off air. But the fact that they're going to go ahead and try to announce a 20-person class just to let those guys in kind of seems like a slap in the face. Because they put in how many safeties and how many cornerbacks in that same time frame. Why? Because they get different stats? I was looking to try to see, because I saw Brian Dawkins got in a few years ago. And then you have like Champ Bailey and some of these other guys that have played a long time. And then you see like, oh, they played 12 years. Well, what about a lineman that's getting beat up every day that played that long? I didn't think there's any reason why Alan Faneca shouldn't have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. Steve Hutchinson as well. And I know I'm forgetting a bunch of other linemen that we talked about, but I just don't see how making a bigger class to include those guys is meaningful to them. I know they'll just be happy to get in, but really, come on. It doesn't make any sense to me. What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
You talk about, and I know we've railed on things similar to this, but this is like the ultimate participation trophy. That when you take something like your Hall of Fame that's supposed to be meaningful, and then you expand and just say, well, we're just going to let all these ones in because we kind of got back. But that's not the way it works. Either you're a Hall of Fame player or you're not. And for those, you got to look at those balances. Some of those guys wait a long time to be represented. And I don't see that there's if you truly had a Hall of Fame career, then it should stand the test of time. You know, when you think back to the Steelers and you think of like Mel Blount, that changed the way that it's played, he deserved to be there. You know, some of those other guys, they can play in any era. I mean, to me, that's what you look at for a Hall of Fame type player.
Oh, I'm looking at it. When I'm talking about linemen, I named Steve Hutchinson and Alan Faneca. But back in like 2000s, if you're playing Madden and you were doing a fantasy draft on your game, you're going to pick one of those guys first. You're not going to be picking a lot of other guys that had gotten in above them. I guarantee I would never have wasted a first-round pick on Brian Dawkins. Are you kidding me? But, oh, wait, he does a bunch of stuff for the community. He does this and that. People know his names because of the interceptions. It just doesn't make any sense. You're going to throw in a guy that has very similar stats to another lineman, and then you're just going to throw them back, push them back, and then say, oh, well, we know you deserve to get in, but it's not the sexy pick. So we're not going to go ahead and let you in the right way. Because what's the deal? Who cares about all these safeties getting in and cornerbacks? It makes zero sense to me that, I mean, if you're looking at the Hall of Fame, I think personally that it should kind of reflect a real football team. Linemen are either making an impact on the field or they're not. Are they Hall of Fame worthy? You wouldn't have a team without them. I just don't get it. It makes me mad whenever you have players of that caliber that have played forever, it seems, and you're just going to skip over them and throw them in this catch-up class or whatever you're calling it. Like everybody gets in right now. Yeah. It's almost like they have to do whatever gets them better publicity. They're throwing in guys and they're saying, oh, well, this guy does this guy does that. But everyone knows his name because he does so-and-so for the community. He has his own charity. Oh, you know what? Like we said about Polamalu last week. Oh, you know what? He comes to all the NFL events and helps us out with free publicity. Let's put him in because, you know, he gets along great with the guys.
Well, that's almost like if you want to get into the Hall of Fame, just start working at NFL Network, and then they'll just move you right into it. They can say, hey, here's Hall of Famer, blah, 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 blah. It fast-tracks you.
I don't even doubt it. You start to hang out with those guys all the time, and then you're in. Then you were in. So I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I can go back to Brian Dawkins because he played around the same time as like Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu. I was shocked when he got in. And then I looked down the list of other guys that were on the list, and it's like, wait, that guy's not in yet? It just, why is one guy getting in when they're not that memorable? Whenever no one would consider them a top safety. No one would put him above Ed Reed or Polamalu. So you're saying the third best safety is worse than the number one guard? Or is better than the number one guard or the number one tackle? It makes zero sense to me. The way they're just picking random players and everyone from that position gets in. Here, you get a free card. Oh, you're in. Oh, you're in. Look at all these guys out there. Oh, look at all these secondary guys we're letting in this year. Just baffling to me. I just don't get it. And it's going to become the point where if they let all these guys in one time, they're going to do it again. You know they're going to do it again. They'll be like, oh.
Well, yeah, because then they'll clear that crop, and then the next one here's another group of guys that we've missed and that we should have put in a while ago. I mean, just because you're eligible for your first ballot doesn't necessarily mean that you have to make it on that one.
And it's the same with, I don't know if they have a limit. Do they have a limit of how many guys they let in each year? Because I thought baseball...
Apparently not, because with letting 30 in next year.
Because I know baseball, I thought they needed a certain percentage. And then if anyone over that percentage, they get in. I don't think they have a limit. But they had even talked about doing that too, where they let some other guys that aren't in back in, or having another chance to get in, and like a super group. And it's like, why? Why revisit those with guys that haven't watched them play? And you know why they're doing it, because if baseball did that, it would be the perfect way for them to bury Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens or a bunch of other guys, because they would put them in with a super class with Pete Rose, and they would say, look, all those guys are in. We put 90 guys in that same year, but you know what? It worked. Because I think that's the way the Hall of Fames are going. It's all about publicity, and can you get people talking about this? That's why I don't think Pete Rose will ever get in baseball, because there's enough controversy while he's alive that it gives them free clicks and free publicity every year. Every year the Hall of Fame comes up. Every year someone talks about Pete Rose for a few weeks, and baseball just eats it up. If he passes away, who knows? They could put him in first time, for all I know. But we'll see. It's getting annoying to me, the Hall of Fame stuff and these Rings of Honors. Just play the game. If you get in, you get in. I also don't like the media voting, because who cares what a bunch of desk jockeys think? Like, if they even go outside? I don't understand why these guys are picking. But got anything else on that Hall of Fame stuff, Matt?
Well, you were saying about Ring of Honor, and it made me think. I saw the Jacksonville, and I might be wrong on this, but I believe that with their Ring of Honor, they were going to put Tony Baselli in, the offensive tackle. Yeah. And they left Fred Taylor off, and Fred Taylor went on a huge rant about how he was much more deserving to go in the Ring of Honor than Tony Baselli. And I thought that's kind of a disrespectful thing to say. The guy that blocked for you and allowed you to produce what you produced is not worthy. Like, so much for the whole team aspect.
It's basically what these are coming down to, though. How many people know Fred Taylor compared to Tony Baselli? And I know Tony Baselli was one of the ones we broke down whenever we talked about the lineman. I don't think he had enough duration. I don't think he played for as long as the other guys. And if that's...
Well, I think he moved over to the Texans when they had their expansion, I believe, and that's what ended up just running them out.
Yeah, and that's when it comes down to the next question. Are you giving an Iron Man award? Or are you giving it based on statistics? Or what is the real criteria here? Because a lot of people were giving T.O. trouble. If you remember, they were thinking about leaving him out because he wasn't going to accept the award at their ceremony, which he ended up not doing anyway. But it's like, what are you going to do with his records? Are you just going to erase them? Like, the dude is in all the record books. You can't just ignore him. And unfortunately for the linemen, they really don't have record statistics that they can point at to get these guys in. So does it become an Iron Man award? I don't know. Because if someone keeps signing you for decades at a time and you're counting Pro Bowls at the same clip as some of these other positions, I would assume you're going to get in, or you should have been in already. I don't know. Anything else you got on that?
Just the last thing is that I always find that the weekend of the Hall of Fame, and kind of following along with some of the speech, there wasn't any one speech that overly stood out to me, but I do like just hearing some of those different talks and hearing the guys talk about their influences and some of the things. You hear so much good character stuff that it's just so many good stories about the positive effect of football. And I know that there's people that would love to see football go away because of it being such a physical sport, but it benefits so many people that it's good to see some of the positives come out.
Oh my God, you sound exactly like those clips they put at the end of movies now. Hey, you paying for this movie supported 10,000 jobs. Great job, you. That's exactly what that sounded like to me. Just some bull crap. People watch the games because they want to have fun, Matt. Not because of all the people they support.
But I gotta find my clips to show my guys. So there's always a lot of good stuff with those.
I mean, when it comes down to it, there's always going to be someone impacting a community, and it's basically like, what legacy are you going to leave? If you don't play sports, you still have a chance to leave a lasting legacy, whether it's in your community, in your family, in whatever you're into. It just doesn't matter. You just have to have that know-how. A lot of the athletes, fortunately for them, they have greater publicity due to the media and the coverage of their sport, so they are able to make an impact. So they can do that. And yeah, as long as they keep making money, they'll keep hiring people and giving them jobs. I mean, you can only imagine St. Louis, so how many people talk about all the workers that don't have jobs now because that stadium's not being used? What about all the concession guys? They always talk about like how if you put in for an NCAA tournament bid, that one day will help your city because you'll get all those ticket revenues. Hey, if you host a Big Ten championship game, did you know that brings $10 million of revenue to Indianapolis? Why don't you put in a bid, DC? But then no one talks about it when the big franchise actually leaves a city that's there for more than just one game. What happens then? Doesn't make any difference. Speaking of not making a difference, Ohio State decided, and I put this on the docket, we're going to be getting into our previews soon. I wanted to do fantasy football first because that's coming up, and we're going to hit on that later in the show. But for college football segment today, I really only had one topic, and that is Ohio State is throwing Urban Meyer under the bus. I don't know why they waited until they did, but I also don't know if it had to do with Harbaugh and Urban Meyer kind of going back and forth at each other. But Harbaugh came out and said a couple weeks ago in an interview, and I don't know if we mentioned it on the show, but he came out and said that Urban Meyer had a great record wherever he coached, but he also has controversy that follows him around. Well, Urban Meyer then was on Fox, and they tried to get him to comment on Coach Harbaugh, and basically he just gave a flat-out assessment saying that they're in a good position and he wouldn't be surprised if they won the Big Ten, and basically sounded like he didn't have any hard feelings towards Harbaugh in his statement, at least from what I could tell. Well, now, Ohio State, right before the football season starts again, this time after media days, they started to release their findings from the investigation last year. And boy, does it paint Urban in a bad light. Because I don't know why they did it now. Are they expecting the team not to do as well? I don't know why they didn't hold on to this information. But there's a lot of stuff that came out where Urban knew that Zach Smith had issues at Florida. And whenever he hired him at Ohio State, they had like a disclosure sting where if he knew of any run-ins with the law or anything like that they should be concerned about. He put no, and when they asked him about it, he said, well, there were no charges pressed, even though there were text messages between him and his wife, and the text messages between Urban's wife and Zach Smith's ex-wife were out in these documents, so they could read basically everything that they were saying, and they all knew of the situations. Then when he gets to Ohio State, Zach Smith is paying for his own strip club visits with his Ohio State credit card. Urban Meyer is a supervisor. I would assume he signs off on that. How did that get past anybody? I mean, I don't even understand how that would happen. I guess he also, and this might have been at Florida, I don't remember. They said one where he brought a staffer home, like one of the assistants or whatever for the football team. He actually took her home where his wife was, and then that's what one of the domestic abuse things were about. Like that's what set off almost the entire thing. And it's just baffling that they would. Number one, they sat on this for how long? I don't know if maybe there was a wait period in Ohio law, but I would have assumed that they would have waited until the football team lost or until something else happened and they needed to push the narrative. To release it right before football season, right before Urban Meyer is going to be on television doing the games. He's calling them for Fox. It's just a bold move. Matt, I know you said you saw this. What are your thoughts on it? How do you take it?
There's so much information and there's so much stuff to process that I almost feel like we need to just go back through the released information, because I feel like you get pockets of this conversation and that one that I'd like to just see what all they're pumping out and what they're trying to drive, because I've seen different stuff where Urban saying, no, I never let Smith leave. But then there's ones that said he had a job offer at Alabama, and Meyer's telling him not to take it, and that he's investing time in him. So it's like, how do you take that approach? You know, to me, if you're saying don't leave, then what are you leaving for? What are you leaving from? There has to be something there that you're trying to give up in the process. So, I mean, it definitely paints him in a bad picture. And I don't know if it's because it's to try to really push that Meyer was bad so that then they can push Day is good with recruiting, because doing it now, they can start to push the recruiting stuff during this early signing period that's going to be coming up and have that not really hurt their class, because I'm sure there's a lot of negative recruiting going around that people are going to try to say, well, with Urban out of the picture, the man that was making all the wins happen is away. You know, is that affecting? I mean, Florida State just pulled a running back that was committed to Ohio State, pulled him away. So, I mean, I'm sure other teams are going to be pulling recruits too.
I think you hit a big thing with the recruiting, because the rumors are heating up. Maybe Ohio State guys listen to our show and they know that I've been talking about Urban Meyer going to USC. Maybe this is them getting out ahead of it. Because you have to believe that if you're in the college football coaching circle, that you have to know that teams are interested in your coach. And, I mean, it's been pretty clear that he's already in L.A. A lot of the USC stuff, it looks like there's a lot more pressure on Clay Helton. Why not? Why not give Urban Meyer a go? I also think a lot of the overlooked thing here from a lot of media is Zach Smith. Zach Smith has been going on Twitter and calling out Ohio State administrators. I think he went after one of the guys. I don't know if he was the chancellor or the president. Zach Smith was saying how he has information on him and things like that. And maybe they just had enough and they said, you know what? Let's just drop it all. Drop it all, and maybe that will shut him up. I don't know. Maybe it has nothing to do with Urban Meyer at all, and they were trying to keep it under wraps just to protect him. And then the Zach Smith stuff just keeps boiling and boiling up, where they were like, look, for PR reasons, we can't have this guy commenting on all of our posts. We just can't have it. We got to just distance ourselves by dumping everything. Because now it just looks like he's completely out of control based on what was released. And Urban was trying to reel him in because one of the texts that Urban sent said something about, hey guys, coaches and players do not mention the Zach Smith stuff around campus. So he knew about it. He warned all the other coaches not to talk about it in front of the players. So to me, that's just crazy that you would put that out there. And right before football season, who knows? And I honestly don't think it hurts Urban Meyer if going to USC. I think that teams would still be interested in bringing him in just because he gets the wins.
I will stand by my statement that I will be shocked if he goes.
If he goes where? USC or anywhere?
Anywhere.
Matt, what better way to redeem yourself? He's not going to be able to redeem himself on Fox doing commentary.
But I don't. What is there to redeem?
His legacy. If you type in Urban Meyer, they're not going to talk about how great of a coach he is. Now all of the latest news is about him and the scandal.
Well, how long? I mean, realistically, if he were to take the USC job, how many years would he have to win to turn that into a improvement on his legacy?
One win if he wins the national championship. It usually didn't take him that long to flip that around, especially in a new conference. He was able to do it in the Big Ten in, a couple years? I mean, he went undefeated his first year in the Big Ten. At Florida, it only took him a few years. So if he were able to come into the Pac-12, win the Pac-12 right away, I think everybody would forget about it. If he got USC into the playoffs, which you know they would put him in, if Urban Meyer won the Pac-12, they would put USC in the playoffs. I don't care if they're 10-2 or 12-0.
Well, I definitely think they're looking to try to expand it to add different teams because it's going to give the college playoff format more footing. But the bottom line in all that is that they have to. I just don't see how he goes to USC and wins a Pac-12 championship or qualifies for a playoff, and then all of a sudden, all the sins from Florida and Ohio State are coming out because who knows how much more stuff hasn't been released yet. That it may be doing, irreparable damage to his reputation and his legacy.
Once he won at Ohio State, outside of Michigan fans that were bitter and Florida fans that were bitter, I don't think anyone was really talking about his Florida arrests. No one really seemed to care until now this came up. Now everyone came back out and was like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. He was a scumbag. And it's almost like they forgot. So if he went out there to win, everyone would be like, yeah, that guy's a great coach. And you would immediately see if Saban retires or even if Urban Meyer, I mean, he's not that old. They would just have Dabo Swinney, Urban Meyer graphics running all day on ESPN. Once he does his press tour, once he's on TV for one more year and he's able to apologize to those people in public, the media is not going to give him a hard time. 0%. They'll just paint Zach Smith as a loose cannon, and that will be that. I don't know.
That's just such a tough pill to swallow. I don't know that's gonna, because even after he won the championship, there was still more stuff coming out about how chaotic everything was at Florida. Like, I don't think the full truth was even out in that situation. And as more details were released, it looks even worse on his part, in my opinion.
He just needs his bag man, Matt. He brought him from Utah to Florida to Ohio State. As long as he didn't give them to Ryan Day, he could be back at it at USC. West Coast, baby. He has Snoop Dogg helping him recruit. He'll be bringing in the guys. Don't worry. Hey, Juju will be out there on campus with him.
He would.
You got anything else on that before we get into NFL?
No.
All right, let's get back into NFL. We're going to wrap it up. Our big topic for this day, the fantasy football advice column. Now, we did this before in the past. We broke it down by position a couple of years ago when we first started the podcast. That got a little bit unruly and a little bit harder to coordinate. But let's get into it. We're just going to talk about our top players. I have up, if you're watching the video, the top players from ESPN doing like a PPR league. Now, Matt and I are in a PPR league, and you're talking to experts. Matt is the defending Top Gun, won the championship last year. Myself, I'm a 2-time winner. So you're going to get advice that we've used to win our league. I don't know if Matt Barry on ESPN, has he even ever played fantasy sports? I don't know if that guy's a champion. Matt, do you know if he's a champion?
I know I'm a champion.
Exactly. So you're going to get great advice here. I'll start off with the top 20 players. I'm going to go through ESPN's list, and then we'll do our own little takes on the positions because we have a good bit of time. Number 1, they have Saquon Barkley. Would you draft him overall number 1?
I don't know that I would take him number 1 overall, but I do think he's going to garner someone's, especially depending on the league. If you're just taking him, I can see the value in taking him, but I don't know that he's a number 1 overall in my opinion. I think the stats will be there. What do you think?
I give him the edge in PPR because they lost OBJ and their receiving core looks depleted. So if you're doing PPR, which people that don't follow fantasy football, that means points per reception. So if he's catching the ball out of the backfield, which he's pretty good at, you're going to get a point every time he makes a catch. Now, normally slot receivers and other guys, that gives them greater value. So if you can get a running back that's catching the ball out of the backfield, that's wherever you can make up a ton of points. So I just wanted to stop on him. I'll go through the next couple because they're all running backs. You have Christian McCaffrey. They have him as number 2. Then Alvin Kamara with the Saints, 3. And then David Johnson, number 4. Those are the top 4 running backs. And I'll speak on David Johnson because he won me a championship a few years ago. I don't know if I would take him in the top 5, let alone the top 4, just because is he going to be durable? I mean, you're looking at guys right now, from those top 4, I don't see how you could take Barkley or McCaffrey above Kamara just based on the quarterbacks. Christian McCaffrey has Cam Newton. Is he known for checking the ball down? Hell no. Is Eli Manning, his old-ass arm, out there with poor decisions where people are already complaining about him being the quarterback so much that for whatever reason the new coach came out and said there's no quarterback competition? Did you see that, Matt?
No.
They drafted that quarterback from Duke extremely high this year, and then the Giants came out and said there's no quarterback competition this year. Eli is the man.
But that's also a really smart move.
Why?
Because unless you're in an absolute dire situation, you don't need to start a quarterback. Especially, they're going to expect that quarterback, was it Jones? They're going to expect him to be reincarnate of every Giants quarterback. That's a tough spot to be in. I think that if you give him a year or two to sit behind Eli and just let him get shelled, then when he does come in, he can come in under better circumstances.
Yeah, and that's where I guess you have a point. I just don't know if there's going to be a lot going forward. Why would they put it out there that there's no competition to even push Eli unless they are ready for Eli to just retire there and they don't want any bad blood and they know they're going to be bad. And if they know they're going to be bad, that means teams are going to focus on Barkley. They're going to stack that box, and they're going to make Eli beat them. And that's where you're looking at an injury. Or, I mean, Barkley got beat up at Penn State. You have to remember, he wasn't always the world-beating running back. Remember that first year when they played at Michigan and they got absolutely destroyed and Barkley did nothing?
Yeah, and that was actually one of the reasons when he was drafted that we were kind of skeptical about him, because it was like he was such an athletic freak. There was like, I don't know that, like, is this a flash in the pan, or is there actually some substance? And as of right now, I feel like we're eating our words that he has shown that he's the back that the Giants thought he was going to be.
Oh, he was purely dynamic, but he had to have guys give him space. Whenever the next year when they came around, he was able to gash Michigan. He had the really great season that put him in as a top draft pick. It was because Penn State was able to get him in space, and they were able to make reads when the year before, when they didn't have that offense, he wasn't able to do that against teams on his talent level. And I think that's where the Giants are at this year. I know last year they kind of struggled, but at that point you still had OBJ. You had a guy that was a top player that was able to get the defense and let them focus on him as well. Now, you're the Giants. You don't have that. Everyone's going to focus on him. I just don't see the point in taking him overall number one. I think that would be very skeptical of that. I just don't think it's a safe pick. Anything else? Any of those other running backs in the top before I keep going?
McCaffrey, does he return kicks and punts for Carolina as well?
I know he dabbled in it. I don't know if he still does.
Because that may be something that adds a little bit of extra something for him, that if he's returning kicks and punts, there's a possibility that he could end up scoring touchdowns on those that could add additional value.
That's pretty rare to put your hopes in him. Now, if your league, some leagues do count kick return and punt return stuff, but I think it's going to be pretty rare, so definitely check your league statistics, because sometimes they will give points on some of that stuff for yards. I think ESPN did that a few years ago. I don't know if they still do, because I remember, was it Hill, whenever he was with the Chiefs before he broke out, I think he did a lot of special team stuff.
Yeah.
Although that's going to be a gamble. Any special team stuff, unless you're getting clear-cut points and you're able to double up with a guy like that, I don't know. I'm still looking at that from the top. They have a couple wide receivers next. They have Devontae Adams from Green Bay. Every time I hear his name, I just think of drop passes, because there were so many times where I would play and I had him on my team and would be down, would be down a point, doing a point per reception. Like, come on, bro, make the catch. It slips right through his hands. There was one game where Aaron Rodgers threw 3 straight passes to him for 10 yards at the end of one of the games. He dropped all 3 of them. I was so mad because I ended up losing that game. All he had to do, Matt, was catch 1, and I win. He dropped all 3. So you're talking about a guy that you're going to take in the top 10. I would not trust him. Any guy that burns me like that, he's not getting a miracle hands. He's just not getting them. And then you're relying on Aaron Rodgers too, who has been getting hurt. So I don't know about that one. The next one, DeAndre Hopkins, which again is another quarterback situation. Is he going to get hurt? So I know these guys put up big numbers, but when you're looking in the first round, you got to try to take a gamble or try to get a sure thing. Now, we do an auction draft, just so that the listeners know if they didn't listen last year when we did our fantasy stuff. We do an auction draft, so you're able to take a flyer on some of these guys if you're able to bid lower. So, like, I might put Devontae Adams, if I can get him for $20, that might be a steal. If ESPN's valuing him in the top 10, some other people, you might be able to bid them up as well and try to get someone to overpay for him. And then they lost a roster spot and a bunch of money on a guy that drops the ball all the time. So those are my scary picks that they have up high. The next one, they have Ezekiel Elliott. They don't even have his name highlighted because he has said that if he doesn't get a new contract, he's not even playing. And so it's almost
because that's a good choice. Well, he should call 1-800-Le'Veon Bell and see how that worked out.
Talk to all the people that drafted Le'Veon Bell last year. Do you think they're happy with that pick? No. In an auction draft, if Elliott goes low enough, let's say right now, if he were to draft and someone is putting up $30 for him, would you bid on him?
I might.
You might. You know, that was leaning towards a no, because his value is probably what people would bid him up to at least 60. That always happens in our league. Someone overspends
because we got some jerks in our league.
So if he was there for 30 and you're thinking about it, knowing that most people would pay 60, you know it's not a good investment to take him high, especially if you're doing a snake draft.
But part of that is it also depends on where you're going to get him. You know, if you're one of those people that hoards all your money till the later rounds, yeah, you can kind of, if you feel like you have enough players around that you can run the risk of, if he doesn't play, does that make my team? Like, I don't think you do that with your top 2, top 3 picks. I don't think you put it in, you put it on Zeke, because if he does hold out and now you've just spent a big chunk of your money for your pool, now all of a sudden you're stuck trying to fill the rest of your roster with guys that you can't, that you have no money to pay for. So I don't think that's the good investment. Now, if it's just straight snake picks and you're just back and forth, that you don't have any value attached to them. Yeah, I think you can take a late round flyer on them, and it's not going to hurt you.
We'll see in the next one, another quarterback case, Odell Beckham Jr. I just talked about how great he was with the Giants. Do you trust Baker Mayfield enough, Matt?
I trust him about as much as I trust Eli Manning.
Because think of how many people got hyped up because of a receiver going to a nice, hot, young quarterback, and it didn't work out. Look at all the Redskin years. I forget who they brought in those years at wide receiver whenever they got RG3. And it was
Anton Randall.
And they talked about it being here we go, breakout offense. And then what happened? Nothing. Those guys fell apart. Now, OBJ might be a better talent, but they also have other weapons.
I want to backtrack for 1 sec, because you brought up Hopkins, and I will say the thing with Hopkins is that even though the quarterback situation is kind of sketchy, if Watson gets hurt, I still think that he's in that top group of guys to take. That I don't think that if he's available, he's not a guy that I think you pass on.
Oh, I don't know, Matt. I'm not seeing any guys here that I would take definitely high. You're looking at him. You're relying on a quarterback. Sure, he can get you some points. Is he going to be that game breaker that's going to put you over the top? You need a guy that's going to consistently score you points, like David Johnson did for me a few years ago, and a guy that's definitely like, remember whenever Antonio Brown was getting all those points? Now he's with the Raiders. He could be injured. No one knows what's going on with him. Like, I don't think you're going to have a guy like that right now.
Well, he posted a picture of his feet right now. It looks like he has leprosy.
I don't even know
it looks like the skin's like falling off of his feet right now. Like, it's horrific.
First off, why are you following him on Instagram?
I'm not even on Instagram, but I just saw via Twitter that he had posted some picture.
Sure, like you don't have his Instagram bookmarked at your computer. You opened up every morning, him and Le'Veon Bell. You're reminiscing. Remember what
Dear Diary. Yeah, I look at all the Super Bowls that we didn't win together.
You look at his feet, and then you look at your own.
No, because my feet are well calloused and seasoned, like a Top Gun winner should have them.
Oh my! Let's get back into this list. Of course, they don't even have. I don't think they have any quarterbacks on this list, which is funny in the top 10 at least. But let's keep going.
And guess what? I'm going to break the bank on this one, because here's my hot take. Mahomes should be your quarterback. If you're going to break the bank on a quarterback, there's the one that you're going to spend the cash on.
Matt, they've already done all the points on which players scored the most points, and that's the whole purpose of this list. Next, they have Todd Gurley, running back, followed by Joe Mixon. Again, crappy teams. Do those guys put up numbers? Then we have your guy, Julio Jones. What do you think on him?
Who should be Astron by far. He's my keeper. He's my heartbeat. He's the reason I even follow Atlanta a little bit, because until he decides to step away, I think he's the best receiver in the league. And to boot, he doesn't run his mouth. All he does is just play. He's like, hey, I want to win a Super Bowl.
What about the next guy, Michael Thomas, highest paid guy?
Until Julio gets his raise.
True. Next you have Damian Williams with the Chiefs running back. iffy. I don't like how they just plug guys in when they lose.
I was gonna say that name doesn't even ring a bell. Is that just someone the next running back that?
Yeah, it's the next running back. ESPN always does this, so they overvalue the backup because they think, oh, that could work in that system, and sometimes it pays off. James Conner did very well for the Steelers last year, and he comes in this list at 19 Steeler fans. But you're looking at a guy that the name doesn't ring a bell to me. Everyone knew James Conner from college because he was great in college. So it didn't make sense for him not to make that jump. I had concerns about his speed, but he was able to learn that patient style that Le'Veon Bell had and make it work for him. So I don't mind. Damian Williams, though, I'd pump the brakes on that one. What about number 14, Matt? Juju Smith-Schuster.
That's not a pick. I mean, in general, I have a hard time drafting Steeler players, and my reason for that is just because watching them and rooting for them, you don't know what you're getting from week to week. And so I just find that hard to watch with my fantasy team, that I'm trying to put my hopes and dreams in these guys that one week they can go off and score 50, 60 points, and then the next week they get one. So I like to try to find guys that can be a little bit more consistent. I think definitely he's going to take on more of a load this year with Brown being gone. I don't know that Roethlisberger is going to be forcing passes to him, but I think that he is going to garner the number one defensive back attention.
True. I don't know if he's going to get number one numbers. The next two guys, both from the Chiefs, you have Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. And I don't know why they're putting all these Chiefs in the top because of their offense, I guess. But why wouldn't you have Mahomes on this list? Because Tyreek Hill I don't trust. Well, because is he even going to play? What's going to go on with him?
They don't value quarterbacks. When you look at the ESPN list, and a lot of fantasy football people say you don't need to take a quarterback early, and I am kind of in that camp where you don't necessarily have to, unless it's that top echelon. When you're looking at the quarterbacks that consistently get you 2 or 3 scores a week that are in pass heavy systems, those are guys that you may want to push depending on the way that the draft is going in your league. I feel like there's a handful of quarterbacks that you say, all right, these are the guys that I have to have, and I have to have one of these guys. And until either the price is right or the opportunity presents itself, you don't have to get crazy. But I do think that at some point you run that risk of, if you fall so far that now all of a sudden you're looking at I'm drawing a blank off the top of my head of quarterbacks that aren't scoring a lot of points every week. It's going to hurt you.
It is going to hurt you. That's why they have this list here, and I'm still confused on some of the guys, because the next couple they have all running backs to end off their top 20. They have Josh Jacobs from the Raiders, because, I would trust the Raiders offense. That's a sure thing. John Gruden has really showed how he can turn that team around, enough that I'm going to trust their running back with one of my top picks, followed by Dalvin Cook, which, of course, we talk about all the time. Are Florida State players even good? Why would you waste a pick?
Blow it right out your ass.
Why would you waste a pick on that guy?
Ass. Just shut up. He's if he stays healthy this year, I'm drafting him.
Then they have, you heard that, people. I know some of our people in our league listen to the show. Drive that bid up. Matt is drafting Dalvin Cook. Make sure you bid him up. He will pay. He won't pay $30 for Ezekiel Elliott, but he'll pay $80 for Dalvin Cook. Right?
I'll pay $120 for him.
Last two, James Conner I already mentioned, and then Le'Veon Bell, which Le'Veon Bell I would never touch. He's already not shown up.
Well, you don't have to actually own him. You can just, it's fantasy. So you can just draft him for like $1 or $2. And then if he does anything, then it's a bonus.
And then you can watch his Instagram videos and listen how great of a job he's going to do.
He can rap. You can listen to his rap videos, and you can celebrate your wins.
I'm looking at their list, and I'll be honest, I was trying to be negative on every guy, just so that no one knew that I was going to go out and spend $100 on Saquon Barkley first round. That way I can just relax on draft day. That's my strategy. Just blow all your money on one guy and then just wait and the other guys just fall in your lap. And then that way you don't feel bad about yourself if you pick a bad team. Sometimes you just have to do that, Matt. That's how you win back-to-back championships. And do
you win championships by falling asleep through your draft?
No, which I know multiple people that do that. Falling asleep is never a good idea. Also, there is zero reason to be an hour late for the draft unless you're in a separate time zone. But even then, they have apps now where you just put it in your calendar and it automatically translates the time for you. How can you be hanging out for an hour drinking beers and then say, oh, you know what, I'm going to sign into my draft while it's already been going on? I obsessively sign into the draft a couple hours ahead of time just to make sure that I'm first one in there. And I look and see if anyone else is logged in. And then I can try to get a feel for it, because you need to know if you're drafting online, which we do, you got to kind of know what the system looks like, what the sounds it makes, so that you don't make a mistake. Make sure you have a good connection. Make sure you run a speed test 13 times before, because you don't want to chance anything. People that also get disconnected because they're doing something else, or I have 30 other tabs open. I'm watching YouTube. I'm watching other questionable videos. Why is that eating all your bandwidth enough to get you kicked out of the fantasy draft thing? You should put 100% focus on this. Make sure you get a couple drinks in you to get loose, and then just have your values list. So going down that list, I don't even know how people can read that list and trust, because I could have question marks on all of those guys. Like I said,
I think it's a good starting point. What you end up having to do is looking at what is the rest of your league thinking. If everyone thinks, oh, we have to run on running backs. So if your first 5 or 6 picks, you have really good running backs jump off the board, then you have to start looking at the rest of the league as where can we capitalize on this? So if you have it, you better make sure that you have a running back, or that you know where that line is. Because if you go in, there was a year that I can remember where there was a run on wide receivers, and I had a couple guys that I was interested in, and then all of a sudden they were gone. And I'm looking at my second tier group of wide receivers, and you weren't going to get the production. So it's almost like you better be willing to risk a sizable chunk, or be willing to risk something for one of your top tier guys, so that you have something to build off of.
Yeah, I'll give another tip too. Like Matt said, know which guys you're going for. I like to write out the positions. You can print them like using Microsoft Excel and just have columns. Okay, here are the top quarterbacks. Here are the top running backs. Here are the top receivers. Because one of the advice pieces I can give you is don't panic. If everyone is running off running backs, guess what? Now's your chance to grab the number 1 receiver. Next round, when they're trying to catch up, then you can get maybe the number 1 quarterback. And that might be enough to get you a run. But you have to see how points are in your league. In a PPR league, a running back that also catches out of the backfield, you can find one of those later in the game, because you look and see which teams are employing a third down back. That might be able to get you 10 receptions or 5 to 10 receptions a game. That's 5 to 10 points that you can get in a later round that other people aren't going to have. Now, if you don't have that luxury, then yeah, most likely you're going to want to try to overspend and get that running back first. But definitely, I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket. I've done both, Matt. I've had quarterbacks early. I've sat and got Matt Ryan one year for $2 and won the championship that year. That was the year with David Johnson.
That was the year that you canceled me out.
Well, because we were both out of money?
No, you got Matt Ryan, and then when we ended up playing, that was the year, because every touchdown that Julio Jones caught, you had the counter touchdown with Matt Ryan. Yes,
and that's another strategy. Should we talk about that? I don't know how many tips we should give out, because I know a lot of people don't realize this, but if you take a quarterback, you can get double points if you take one of their receivers. Now, I don't recommend taking the number 1 guy, because if they have a bad game, it kind of hurts you. But if you're looking for wide receiver number 3 and you already have the quarterback, maybe you take one of the other receivers on that team in case he catches a touchdown. Then it gives you double incentive to watch that team and cheer them on. Maybe, who knows? Maybe you throw that in. Maybe that late running back, you're going to take the third down back from the team your quarterback's on. And it definitely helps out if your quarterback's Tom Brady. I make any move you can to get Tom Brady because he's a great guy to have on your team when you win a championship. I'll throw that out there, Matt. I think that would be my number one quarterback. Who's your number one quarterback? You said Mahomes?
I think so. I mean, statistically, I think Mahomes is the guy. I think you can also make the argument for Matt Ryan as well, just because they have Ridley showed that he could improve with having Julio there, plus having the two-headed snake of Freeman and Coleman. I mean, they have a lot of weapons at their disposal that it's not going to hurt you.
Well, first off, Matt, I don't know why you brought him up because he's my guy that I let sit, and you know I can get him for cheap. Why would you tell other people about that?
Well, Matt Ryan was my quarterback that got me my Top Gun. So Matt Ryan is clearly a Top Gun caliber quarterback.
Exactly. I should have kept him for $2, but I don't know why I make the decisions I do sometimes.
Probably because you're drinking hours before the draft.
Hey, I do have a question here unrelated to anything. How much would you bid for Mahomes?
All things relative, I would at least, I think you can start that bidding at 30 to 35 to start with and just see where it goes. Because if you're doing it like in our draft, you put him up for that and instantly he goes to like $90, $100 right off the bat.
Well, here's another tip. Find out who else is in your league and what their favorite teams are, because good chance there are at least some homers. So like we play with obviously a bunch of Pittsburgh Steelers fans. So just put up Steelers all the time. People will feel that nostalgia kick in and they'll say, "Oh, I remember that touchdown. Vance McDonald, yeah, I remember that touchdown catch he had. Yeah, sure, I'll pay $30 for him." And then you just laugh and laugh and laugh. Same with college teams like Matt. Matt's going to bid on every Florida State guy. We know it.
There was a year that my whole draft strategy was I blew all of my account. I said, I don't care. In my head, I said, I don't care no matter what the value goes to. I want to try to have an entire roster of Florida State players just to see what happens. And I ended up just getting crushed.
Yeah, and no one was shocked. Because then they realized Florida State players aren't good in the NFL.
No, because everyone kept outbidding me for them because they got a bunch of assholes in our league. I had enough people that I could fill that roster with Florida State players. However, I ran out of cash.
You couldn't get it done. Do you have any other tips to wrap this up before we get to the final bell? What's your number one fantasy advice to people out there?
Enjoy it, because football season is a treasure. And you need to. So play. Don't just be a turd and not play fantasy football.
No,
be in a league.
It is good for a community to stay in touch with friends, to be in a league. I'll give the opposite advice. Make sure you sound negative and angry. Think of George Costanza and Seinfeld whenever he pretends to just be annoyed all the time so that people don't bother him at work. Just find tidbits about people getting hurt and just send it to your group chat weeks before the draft so that no one knows what you're thinking. So then they'll be like, "Oh, why would I draft that guy? He sent like 10 messages about how he was hurt." Send pictures of Antonio Brown's feet to the group. Let them see it and see what happens. Let them know that you don't care and you hate every player. But secretly, you're gonna buy that jersey when one of your guys, David Johnson, wins you that championship. You're gonna get that jersey and you're gonna wear it with pride. Unfortunately, I didn't even do that, but I did send a bunch of videos of him jumping out of the swimming pool. Remember that?
Yeah, and he jumped right out and blew his knee out.
Yeah, he got hurt the next year. That's the last time I was positive in a draft, Matt. So your advice was complete garbage. You spend your keeper on David Johnson. He gets hurt even after a whole offseason of posting motivational videos of him and things like that. It just doesn't work out. So don't stay positive. Let's get into the final bell. Matt, you got anything to wrap the show up?
I don't know. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Cards are still in it. Excited about that, and I'm excited to be back in business for football season. So be ready to listen to more of my stuff about upcoming camp next week.
Sounds good. I don't have anything to wrap up. If you want to send me questions about fantasy, guys, definitely send them, and I'll tell you both your picks are wrong. If you want to ask me who to put in as your starter and who to sit on the bench, it's like, why did you have either of those guys on your roster? So definitely do that, and I will give you the best advice on how to be a top gun. But thanks for listening. Go to our website, southboundsports.com. Check out our Amazon link if you want to help support the show. Go through that. Purchase whatever you want. It will help us out. And we will see you next week.
And we definitely won't know what you're buying, so don't feel ashamed of buying your pervy stuff because we won't know what you're buying.
How very Urban Meyer of you, Matt.
I've followed your theme.
Yeah, Matt won't even know. He doesn't even care.
I don't care what you buy, but you can be a support.
Yes, be a support. Definitely. Thanks for listening. Tell your friends to subscribe, and we will see you next week.